From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, folks, good morning. We are live. How is everyone doing today? Let's get this background done right. We've got a busy show today, a lot of things to talk about, but sorry I couldn't be live yesterday. Again, getting back into the groove of things, and I've got a big announcement next week, so I'll share it with all of you guys, and then you'll know, and we'll be straight, and life will go on. But good morning to everyone. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Let's see who's joining us. Greg is going, woohoo, I made it this morning. Good morning. Good morning to you, Greg. Good morning to Matt, Lee, and everyone else tuning in live. Make sure to subscribe to the CyberHub podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. Make sure to follow us there. Got a big show today. A lot of things to talk about. Like I said, next week also on Wednesday, I'll have a very big announcement on this show. On this show at 9 a.m., I'll be leading off with a very big announcement. But before we do that, good morning to Roger, who's also tuning in. A shout out to the companies who make this show possible. KnowBe4, Wistic, and Ativo Networks. Make sure to check them out. Make sure to subscribe also. And finally, before we get into today's show, what would it be without a cup of coffee this morning? An espresso, maybe? Beverage of your choice? What are you drinking this morning? Because it's 9:03 a.m. Eastern time. And I know for me, this is critical. It's my second of the morning because, I started a few hours ago, and I do these every 2 hours for the first 4 or 6 hours of my workday, depending on how good my sleep was, and then go right into it. So cheers. God, I love good espresso. There's something very special about coffee. All right, let's get right into what's going on. We've got 3 companies that are patching critical things. We'll start with VMware patching a privilege escalation vulnerabilities and tools for Windows. Track the CVE 2021-21999er featuring a CVSS score of 7.8. The issue is a local privilege escalation that requires for an attacker to have normal access to a VM, virtual machine, for successful exploitation. An attacker with normal access to a VM may exploit this issue by placing a malicious file renamed as openssl.cnf in an unrestricted directory, which would allow code to be executed with elevated privileges, according to VMware. The flaw was reported by Zishan Sheikh from Not So Secure and Yu Jing Yi of Kihu 360. Shout out to those guys. The vulnerability has been addressed with the release of VMware tools for Windows 11.2.6, VMRC for Windows 12.0.1, and the app volume for release 2103, app volumes 2.18.10. Users are advised to update and patch as soon as humanly possible, so please do that. Move on to another story where Palo Alto patches a critical vulnerability in Cortex XSOAR. CVE tracked as 2021-3044, rated critical severity with a CVSS score of 9.8, can be exploited by a remote unauthenticated attacker with network access to the Cortex XSOAR server to perform unauthorized action through the REST API. I want to take you guys back a year or so, before COVID, so a year and a half or so. And I said APIs are going to be the biggest thing coming forward. It's going to be because so much of our business, so much of our DevOps, so much of our integration relies on APIs. There is no way that goes on and doesn't get taken advantage of. Here we go. According to Palo Alto in their advisory, the issue is not a remote code execution vulnerability. The issue enables an unauthorized attacker to perform actions on behalf of an active Cortex XSOAR integration, which includes running commands and automation in the Cortex XSOAR war room, according to Palo Alto. The security hole affects XSOAR versions 6.1.0 and 6.2.0 on configurations with active API key integrations. Patches have been made available for both impacted versions. Ask for mitigation. The vendor recommends revoking all active integration API keys and restricting network access to XSOAR server, meaning just making it unavailable to work. Good morning to the awesome James McQuiggan. Good morning, Matt Lee, and I have LinkedIn user here, so I'm going to say it's either John or Heather. I'm not sure who it is, and I don't have that open next to me, so I apologize. Let's move on to our next story. SonicWall left a VPN flaw partially unpatched amidst zero-day attacks. A critical vulnerability in the SonicWall VPN appliance that was believed to have been patched last year may have been now found to have been botched, with the company leaving a memory leak flaw unaddressed until now that could permit a remote attacker to gain access to sensitive information. An update was rolled out yesterday, taking care of this. Track the CVE 2021-20019 or CVSS score 5.3. The vulnerability is the consequences of a memory leak when sending a specially crafted unauthenticated HTTP request, culminating in information disclosure. So, it is what it is. And sorry, it's Pedro. So Pedro, I'm sorry. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. SonicWall's aspect is very interesting here, folks, because the SonicWall piece is going to have, it talks about kind of like the challenge of this patch, and patching is difficult. You don't always get it the first time around, but it took them nearly a year to fix this. So, it is what it is. We'll move on. We'll move on to the next story, which I like a lot more. MITRE is adding D3FEND's countermeasures to the attack framework funded by the NSA. So the NSA says the primary goal of the initial D3FEND release is to help standardize the vocabulary used to describe defensive cybersecurity technology functionality. MITRE described D3FEND as an early-stage experimental research project with the primary goal of helping to standardize the vocabulary used to describe defensive cybersecurity technology the cybersecurity technology functionality. In a statement, the NSA said D3FEND establishes terminology of computer network defensive techniques and eliminates previously unspecified relationships between defensive and offensive methods. And what are those? Harden, detect, isolate, deceive, and evict. This is essentially the defend.mitre.org. You can see the link in the show notes. So if you're not watching us live, if you're listening on the podcast, on your favorite podcast platform after the fact, just go down to the links. I think it's the 4th or 5th link in the show notes. You'll be able to see it on your device as well. And obviously you can see the various different things that can be done here, from hardening to detecting and detect. There's a lot in the network traffic analysis side of it. There's also a lot in the network isolation side of it. This is very network driven. James says, Wahoo D3FEND, the standardized vocabulary is important in communication with the business execs. Something James, totally agree. So totally agree. Finally, we're seeing something from MITRE. Now, if MITRE will only do something similar with APTs and vulnerabilities, we're set. We solve all of our problems. Just that simple. Our final story of the day has a little to do with cyber from a business perspective, but a lot to do from a human perspective. So the DOJ yesterday seized 33 websites that were used by the Iranian Islamic Radio and Television Union, which was singled out by the government last October for what officials described as efforts to spread disinformation and sow discord among American voters ahead of the 2020 elections. The U.S. also seized other sites that were tied to Hezbollah, which is a designated foreign terrorist organization, as well as a Palestinian station as well. Let me see, Press TV, El Alam, and then right here, the U.S. government took over the domain name news websites for Palestine Today, which reflects the viewpoints of Gaza-based Islamic militant group Hamas and Islamic Jihad. So all of these were all administered by a U.S. company, and now all of those sites are down, taken over by the U.S. Essentially Department of Justice. Responsibility for providing name service for domain name press.tv was apparently switched to Amazon name server on Tuesday at mid-afternoon European time. According to Ron Julie Monte from Risk IQ, found a total of 24 C sites shared the same Amazon name server, meaning they were all coordinating their messaging and spreading disinformation. A very, very interesting takedown by the U.S. Department of Justice, and bound to have some things going on. So, yeah. Greg says, going to make bullet sponge like me sound smart, LOL. Morning to Andrew Todd, who's also joining us here towards the end of the show. That's it for our show this morning. Go check out the D3FEND framework. It really is something to study. I spent some time on it yesterday. I'm going to spend more time on it over the weekend. And I'm very interested to see how it actually works with MITRE attack framework versus D3FEND with alongside of the CIS, and NIST. So it's going to be it's fun when you see all these different frameworks and you're trying to find kind of like putting it all together and finding the right kind of framework for what you're trying to do as a practitioner. I geek out over this kind of stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people will as well. I'm glad the NSA is doing something along those lines. But remember, harden, detect, isolate, deceive, and evict are the keys here. Harden, detect, isolate, deceive, and evict. That's how D3FEND works. Harden, detect, isolate, deceive, and evict. Say it how many times so you guys all remember it. It's critical because that's the vocabulary we're talking about. Hardening our networks, detecting, isolating, deceiving, meaning let's decoy, and evict. And so it's great to see deceive in here as well, by the way. So, from honeypot to deception technology, there's definitely some stuff there that's going to be beneficial for every practitioner. By the way, one last thing before we end the show. New scam alert. Electricity companies. Yesterday, my phone rings. Number. Don't recognize it, but it's a local number. So I'm like, well, maybe it's someone, I'm trying to get some stuff done around my house. So maybe it's one of the people I've called and then saved the number. And so they're calling me back, or maybe they're calling me from a different number. So I answer. On the end of the call is someone pretending like they're my electric company and I'm delinquent. And within 30 minutes, they're going to shut my electricity down. Only these guys did not do very good OSNet. The electricity company they called from doesn't exist where I live. Number two, they were in a very, very loud call center, like really cheap technology, like at least get noise canceling headphones for your people, folks. And so keep your eye out for that. That's a new scam. They're targeting people trying to say that you're delinquent on your electric bill and pay me. So keep your eye out for that. That's it for us here today, guys. I'm done. That's it. We're finito. Tonight, Tech Town Square, 8 p.m. Eddie and I are going to be talking a lot about a bunch of different things around NFTs and crypto and tech. So it's going to be a really, really good show. Make sure you tune in tonight, 8 p.m. right here on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube under the CyberHub podcast channel. My personal LinkedIn, James J. Azar. And then we'll be at 9 p.m. on Clubhouse. So start the show right here. We then move to Clubhouse and continue the discussion. The Clubhouse room will be set up later today, so make sure you tune in there. That's it for us here. Till then, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. By the way, LinkedIn user, where can we find this table? It's in the links in the show notes. So I think it's the fourth or fifth link down. I think it might be the fifth link. The fifth out of 6 links is this one right here in the show notes. So you can go check it out. We hope to see you there tonight, Matt, as well. And Greg was kind enough to share it. D3FEND, D3FEND.mitre.org is the link for this table so you guys can see it all. All right. Cheers, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. But tonight, Tech Town Square, 8 p.m. Be there. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a fun show. Till then, folks, cheers and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.